I'm kind of completely obsessed by murder mysteries and murder and crime since I was kind of yay high. And most of the stuff you can't write about unless you've experienced it, or at least kind of have a kind of inkling of what it's like.
So, as a follow-on to that, how do you write about a murder then?
When you write for like The Bill or EastEnders or Holby, the turnaround is so fast, it's absolutely bonkers.
Do you base any of your characters in the books on anyone in real life? And if so, can you reveal anyone?
When we go out anywhere for a drive, I just go, oh, that's a good place for a body, and that's a good place for a murder, or that's a good place for a chase. Because I just went, well, you know, it wouldn't be the worst thing if that person got murdered in a car park. And I go, I'm currently working on a Netflix series with Benedict Cumberbatch.
Hey guys, crack open a drink, because we are back with another episode of The Blue Podcast with me, Mackers and Tom. How you doing, mate?
Yeah, doing very well, thank you, mate. How are you?
I'm good. I finally got the intro right.
You did. Third time's the charm. Although you guys won't see it, so
yeah,
that'll be one for just us.
It's just one for us. We have a very special guest on today. Do you want to introduce him?
Yeah, we have Simon McCleave on today. He's a best-selling author, most notably known for his novel The Snowdonia Killings, which has sold over 300,000 copies on Amazon. Actually, it's the first of a series of 14 books in the D.I. Ruth Hunter series. And there's actually, you mentioned before, Simon, there's meant to be a TV series filmed this year, in fact, based upon that series, which is fantastic. Yeah. And also, Simon was a writer on several well-known TV shows, including EastEnders, Casualty, Doctors, and The Bill.
Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Welcome, Simon, welcome.
That's one heck of an introduction.
I know, it's all right, isn't it?
It's not bad.
It doesn't sound like me.
That was very well rehearsed, I might have to add. Yeah, I thought I did a good job there.
So how was your Christmas, Simon?
Nice and quiet.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I'm at an age where quiet Christmases are good now. So they didn't used to be. They used to be quite crazy. But no, just with the family, lots of nice food, watching the telly, take the dog for a walk, and just have a bit of a relax. So yeah, no, all good.
Sounds good. Looking forward to it. We'll crack on with the podcast where we do our icebreaker questions. As always, you guys can play along at home if you guys would like to, because obviously, as we mentioned, you are a crime novel author. The topic for this icebreaker question is crime novels.
Good.
Tom, do you want to kick us off with the first question?
Yeah, absolutely. A little bit of a fun one to begin us off with. Arthur Conan Doyle is responsible for the creation of which famous fictional detective?
Might be...
I've got a multiple choice.
ABC
Just to help out, I've got a feeling you know the answer already, Simon. But I'm going to give him multiple choice. Although I'm a little nervous that the first syllable you said there might
I also think
giving it away.
I pretty much know what the answer was.
Okay, well, we'll rattle through them anyway. So we've got A, Inspector Morse, B, Inspector Clouseau, and C, Sherlock Holmes.
3, 2, 1, Sherlock Holmes.
Nicely done. Yeah, that's the correct answer. I had a sneaky suspicion that might be a little bit too easy for you, but...
See, I went for a bit of a silly one to start off with.
Look on then.
Now you'll see why. It's a serious question. Who wrote the first crime novel ever?
Oh.
But when I start saying the names, you'll understand why it's a bit silly. So we got Steenson Blitcher,
Right.
Exodarch Cedriel, or Sinead Leandra Meyer.
Okay. All the favourites and all like stacked on my shelf, obviously.
Of course, right.
I have literally no idea, so I will take B as my answer, even though I can't.
Exodarch Cedriel.
That's the fella.
Yeah.
Or it might be a woman, actually.
I'm going to follow Simon and go with B, since I've got no clue either. Straight down the middle seems the safest bet.
Yeah.
The answer is A, Steenson Blitcher.
Steenson should have got that, yeah.
When you said that it was going to be obvious, I had
No, I said this was silly. This is a silly one.
I mean, silly, definitely.
Yeah.
Yes.
The third one, I literally just typed in weird baby names, and
Excellent.
Exodarch Cedriel came up.
I don't know who's naming their child that.
And then with C, I literally just random generate first name, random generate second name.
Right, okay.
Fantastic.
Good job.
Nice one. Right. Anyway, we'll go to my question too. Might trip you both up on this one. We'll see. Which 1934 Agatha Christie novel was adapted to a film of the same name in 2022? Was it A, The ABC Murders, B, Murder on the Orient Express, or C, Death on the Nile?
I'm going to C.
I'm going B.
I've tripped you up, Simon. It's C, Death on the Nile. Murder on the Orient Express was in
This is the question
2017.
Oh, gosh.
I may have tripped you
That's
up a little bit
embarrassing.
there. No, that's quite okay. That's quite okay. I was going to go with Murder on the Orient Express originally, and then just swapped it up because I thought everyone might go.
When you said this might trip you up, it made me go, okay, so there's something I know,
so
Tom.
you mean-
I know
right.
there's going to be something in the question. And I heard 2022. I was like,
I may have been lying about 1934 Agatha Christie novel, by the way. I may have swapped it up halfway through the thing when I was writing it. So I'm a little worried about it. So maybe I've actually tripped myself up rather than... We'll include this just so we don't make it sound foolish. Just as I was reading it out, I was like, I've made an error here, because I was going to write Murder on the Orient Express and then swapped it to Death on the Nile after, but then forgot to take out the date that Agatha Christie wrote the novel.
Oh,
Yeah, so that may be my bad.
Sneaky.
That may be my bad. Anyway.
well, my number 2 is, who was Sherlock Holmes based on? Was it A, Dr. Joseph Bell, B, William Smith, or C, Charles Lindbergh?
I'm going to have to go A. I'm pretty sure Charles Lindbergh is. I'm sure it's not Charles Lindbergh, and I don't know who the middle guy sounds made up. So I'm going A.
I'm going to use my high levels of detective skills and copy Simon's answer.
Have you copied Simon's answer every time so far?
I think it's the best strategy, to be honest.
The answer is indeed A, Dr. Joseph Bell. William Smith was actually who apparently Dr. Watson was based on.
Oh, right. Okay.
And Charles Lindbergh, I think, was who the detective in Orient Express was made of. Was
Borrow.
yes.
Oh, very good.
Sorry, my voice is going slightly there.
Just coughed it out.
Yeah.
Okay, for my third question, we have... In 1968, crime writer E. Richard Johnson won a Mystery Writers of America Award for his first novel, whilst in prison, for committing what crime? Was it A, murder, B, robbery, C, treason?
I've got to go murder. That's got to be A.
I'm going to go treason.
Should have stuck with the expert. It's murder. Yeah.
Excellent.
In fact, he actually first picked up writing whilst in prison and then
right.
won a series of awards for his novels, which I just thought was fascinating. Like
Yeah.
a crime writer who actually committed murder.
Who can write about it authentically?
Yeah, absolutely.
I know how this works.
So, Simon, how do you know about murder?
Yeah, well, as my wife often asks me, I no comment.
My final question. Agatha Christie in World War I was an apothecary's assistant, leading her to have an extensive knowledge of what? Was it A, toxins, B, murder, or C, lobotomy?
It's definitely A.
Toxins.
Yeah.
It's definitely A.
That's good. Cool. Yes, it is. It is.
Apothecaries.
toxins.
It's that kind of mixing up
Apothecary,
of potions, isn't it, in chemicals and stuff. So
I'll take your word for it, Simon.
yeah, that's what it is.
But anyway, is that our question's done, Matt?
Mhm.
It
Marvellous.
is, isn't it?
Oh, thank you, guys.
That's all right. Podcast is over. Cheers for coming, Simon.
I'll see you later. Bye.
No, we'll dive straight into it. And obviously, I think the first place to start is you're a crime writer, murder mystery novels. What first appealed to you about that genre and writing in particular?
I'm kind of completely obsessed by murder mysteries and murder and crime since I was kind of yay high. So kind of like whether it was Enid Blyton or the James Bond books or... And then as I kind of grew up, I just kind of always attracted to watching and reading about crime and detectives. So the only thing I ever kind of thought I wanted to write about was crime, which might say something about my dark imagination, slight mentalness. But and when I came out of university, which was a long time ago, I worked as a script editor. So I worked at the BBC working with writers on their scripts, making them better. So kind of, working to get that stuff. And then I ended up writing scripts for some were crime-based, so like Silent Witness and Midsummer Murders and The Bill, and some weren't. But I was just drawn to it. And then more recently, I've read a lot of crime novels, and people were asking whether I kind of sort of go back to writing. And so I just gave it a go. I just wrote a crime novel because it seemed like the most obvious thing for me to write about. I wouldn't, if someone said, "Can you write a sci-fi or a romance?" I literally would not have a clue. So it's the only thing I could write, and it just happens that people seem to quite like buying them. So,
Well, yeah.
which is handy.
Very handy.
very useful, yes.
But that first novel you wrote was Snowdonia Killings, wasn't
Yeah.
it? Yeah. But obviously that was incredibly successful. Did you anticipate that when you wrote it, or was it more of just a hobby that you thought, okay, I'll write a novel to see what happens?
Completely the latter. So I'd worked as a scriptwriter for a while, and then I pretty much got burnt out, and I worked as a teacher for a while. And while as a teacher, people going, you should really do some writing. So in the kind of detentions or early before like school, I just wrote a book as a thing to do. And I thought my mum and dad might buy it, and that would be it. And then it'd be like sort of, I'd have like 300 copies sitting in the garage and no one would ever buy it. And then suddenly I set up my own publishing company and I released it, and suddenly it went mad. And it was just like people were buying, there was like thousands of copies every week, and it was going up the charts like this. And I was going, well, that's really weird. I should write another one.
And that you did?
Yeah, I did. So yeah. And then ever since then, I just kept doing it. And people kept buying them. And I was like, oh, this is quite good.
That's not bad.
Right.
Kind of stepping through the pattern there. So you said you were helping people write scripts. So what does that kind of entail with the BBC? So obviously you have the original scriptwriter.
Yeah, so you sit down with a writer and you have their script, whether it's a film or whether it's a sort of TV drama or an episode of something. And basically you've read it before, and it can be anything from this character doesn't quite work in this bit, all the way down to that line of dialogue doesn't quite ring true, or that scene's a bit long, and you're just going through it, kind of editing it as you go along, just to kind of, and you talk with the writer might say, actually, I love that scene, I don't want to touch it. And so then you're kind of like either trying to persuade them or you let it go. So you're just kind of there to kind of make the script better, improve the script with the writer. But then I suppose having done that for a while, I thought, I reckon I could probably do this. So I thought, I'll give that a go now. Yeah. I reckon I could probably do that as well.
So do you think those skills have kind of overlapped into your novel writing?
Absolutely, yeah.
Is there any in particular skills that you think have shone through?
Certainly with the writing TV, when you write for like The Bill or EastEnders or Holby, the turnaround is so fast. It's absolutely bonkers. It's like they'll ring you up on a Friday and go, we changed this and we changed this character. This character's not a 5-year-old girl, it's an old woman, and then you need to change it. And by the way, we're filming it on Monday morning, so we need it by then. Wow. And then you're like, So the speed at which I write novels is influenced by the fact that I used to have to turn stuff around really fast. So I just learned to write very quickly and then rewrite really quickly and just keep doing it. So now I just take that and I write books at that speed, which everyone kind of goes, well, have you written 20 books in?
Yeah. In 3
or 4 years? That's crazy. And
that's
just because I write like I did when I was working in TV.
I'm guessing you still enjoy that, I guess, pace to it, I'm guessing, with the...
I don't know how to write any slower.
Yeah.
I don't know what I would do. So, I don't know if you've heard of the writer, Sir Ian Rankin now, but he's already very famous, probably the most famous British crime writer. And I had a kind of meeting or a sort of chat on Zoom with him, and he writes one book a year. And I just and I didn't say it to him, but I kind of went, God, what do you do for the other sort of 8 months? 9 months? It's like, do you not go mad? But I mean, obviously, he sells like millions of copies and he makes about £1 million a year, so he doesn't really have to worry about it. But that kind of pace would drive me crazy.
But do you think that's just because he's deliberating over the plot and the characters for so long, or so that's just his attention to detail and wanting to get it absolutely perfect? But obviously, I would expect that you'd have that same strive for perfection. So what sort of differentiates you from someone that takes longer?
He spends a lot of... He does this kind of mad thing, which is absolutely fine because obviously works very well for him, where he writes the first draft of his book over a period of months, and he has no idea who did the murder. He roughly knows what the murder is. He sort of knows roughly the kind of area, doesn't know how it works out at the end, and he writes for a couple of months just finding out, by writing it, what happens.
Right.
And then he goes back, and then very slowly goes through it and starts kind of going back and... I mean...
That sounds a little bit insane.
Whereas when I start a book, I know who did it, when they did it. I know the ending. I know the beginning. I roughly know the middle. So I can write quite quickly because I just go, right, I know where we're heading. But he's a knighted crime writer that sells gazillions of books. So I kind of go, but I don't know. That's not. I couldn't do that. It would drive me mad.
Yeah. Would you say? Oh, go on, Mackers. I'll let you go, mate.
With the the use of a lot of Welsh names in your books and kind of the I'm struggling with that, Arthurian legend.
Yes.
Do you have to do a lot of research into that to make sure you get it right?
Yeah.
So that must obviously factor into your...
Yeah, that's the fun bit. You can kind of like... because that was first when I first thought Snowdonia is a great place for a set of crime stories, because no one's ever done it. And then I thought, and sort of the more you kind of delve into it, you kind of got, the legend of the Lady of the Lake and Excalibur. That's meant to be in Snowdonia. Arthur's body is meant to be might be buried in Snowdonia. There are theories that the Holy Grail came all the way from the Middle East and is buried in Snowdonia. So it's got all this kind of amazing stuff, and you've got druids and dragons, and so there's so much stuff that's already there, and it kind of goes back thousands of years. I just kind of went, A, I love researching it because it's really interesting, and B, it just gives the books a real kind of a different kind of feel.
Yeah.
So that, that kind of, even though it's 2021, the places that they're going and the castles that they're going to, all this kind of stuff, this goes back thousands of years to the Romans or the Ice Age or whatever it might be, and it just kind of gives it a real kind of depth, I think.
And obviously me and Tom, well, I used to go to Swansea University.
Yeah.
Still go to Swansea University.
South Wales, though, and it's a very different place.
But we do appreciate the difficulties of the Welsh language.
The language, yes. I don't speak Welsh. So if there is anything, I'll run it past my my wife, who does speak Welsh, some Welsh, so I kind of run it past her and get it right.
So far, so good.
Yeah. Hopefully.
That's still quite impressive, though, because I know we know a lot of obviously Welsh people that don't speak the language at all.
Yeah.
I know they're trying to sort of bring the language back, but it's definitely been dying off over the last few decades, hasn't it?
There's more Welsh speakers in North Wales than there are in South. It's much more of a thing. And actually, when you go from where we are, which is near Wrexham, and you go into Snowdonia, there are places where if you go into a shop, everyone's speaking Welsh.
Really?
Everyone. And then they'll talk about you. So I'll go to like, who's this southerner? And they'll say, stuff. But the best thing is when going with my wife, when they start saying stuff, and then she'll respond in Welsh, and they go,
sorry, we didn't know.
No, we didn't know. We thought you were southerners. We thought you were Londoners, and that's why we're slagging you off. So yeah, no. But yeah, there is a big push. I mean, I can only talk for North Wales, but I know there's a big thing with the language up there.
With the locations as well, I'm guessing you've gone to most of them.
Yeah,
or if not all of them.
All of them, yeah. Because it's like I can't write. I get so much stuff when I go, like, obviously I spend all my time when we go out anywhere for a drive, I just go, oh, that's a good place for a body, and that's a good place for a murder, or that's a good place for a chase, which kind of, drives everyone mad. But also if I'm driving, if I go and research somewhere, I'll sit down and I'll just see, hear and smell, or whatever it is, stuff that I can't make up from sitting in my office. So I'll go, oh, there's a piece of rusty farm machinery, or there's a hill there that's got a kind of certain colour. Well, I can't make that stuff up in my head. So if I go out and take notes, that when I come back, hopefully it feels authentic in the book. So, and it's not a bad job, is to go, hey, I've got to go to drive to Snowdonia to do some research. Poor you.
Yeah. So it sounds like just a nice way of being able to put yourself in your character's shoes almost, because like you say, if you're walking along and you look down, there's a little divot that might end up appearing in one of your stories.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. No, it's great.
Yeah.
All the time sort of taking mental notes of places and stuff that will go in the book.
It sounds like a fascinating job. It sounds like a really thoroughly enjoyable job.
So does that mean when I was reading the Dark Tide with the morning swims, do you go on the morning swims?
I have done some cold water swimming. It's horrible, but it is also really, like, when you come out, it's amazing. You do get a massive rush from it. But I haven't done it quite as much as the character's done. I kind of, but yeah, no, I've done a bit of it.
I bet that helps as well, being able to sort of describe the sensations that the character's going through.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because a lot of writing is really descriptive, isn't it? You've got to paint the picture for your reader, and actually doing it yourself, you know exactly what to say. Yeah,
most of the stuff you can't write about unless you've experienced it, or at least kind of have a kind of inkling of what it's like.
So, as a follow-on to that, how do you write about a murder then?
Pass. No, I don't know. Well, I suppose actually my research history is pretty kind of colourful. So I read books about true crime, and I do research into real killers, and I speak to police officers. So I've got a contact in Wrexham CID who's a detective sergeant, and I'll talk to him about stuff that's going on with him. Just research, and then I have to use my imagination. I don't know what it's like to. Well, I don't know what it's like
Of course,
to carve up
yeah.
a body and put it under a patio. Not yet, anyway. So, so yeah, I'll imagine that bit.
Obviously, you do have the new series coming. Well, new series, the Anglesey series. Your big one was obviously the Snowdonia Killing series, which when you had D.I. Ruth Hunter. How difficult was it for you to kind of transition to Laura Hart from Ruth Hunter? Because I can imagine that had a bit more of. She has quite a big place in your heart.
Yeah, Ruth. Oh, yeah, Ruth is like, you know, however crazy it sounds, like she is a character. She's real life in my head. I know what. I've now written 14 books with her. No, I've written 18 books with her because there's 4 books set in London. So she's a real person. So I know in any situation how she reacts. I know what music she likes. I know what she did when she was 16. I know what her upbringing was like. I know what food she likes, what wine she likes. It's like she's just a real person.
Yeah.
However crazy that sounds. But I suppose when you're a reader, you feel that when you're reading it, if I don't feel she's a real person, then how are the readers meant to feel like she's a real person that you're rooting for? I suppose it's because a big publisher came to me and they wanted me to do something similar. So Laura Hart she's very different, but the 2 series aren't a million miles away from each other.
Both based in North Wales.
Both based in North Wales. They're crime procedurals. They've got a slightly different tone, slightly different characters. But it's not like, I suppose they didn't come and ask me and write sort of a sci-fi series, which I would have really, I wouldn't know, a clue. So it was okay. No, I enjoyed it. And I enjoyed doing something different with a different character. It was also a good experience working with HarperCollins because they're a massive publishing company. And they've got really good editors and you kind of get, it's good stuff.
Yeah. And obviously both of them are female leads. Do you find it a bit easier to write female leads, or is that just a coincidence, I guess?
I think it was like, when I first started writing a crime book, I want to write something different. I do not want to write an aging copper, male copper. He's got a bit of a drink problem. He's gone through a divorce. He's a bit of a maverick, and he's always clashing with his boss. And it's like, he always does his stuff his own way. We've seen that a million times before. So I went the other way, and I went for a female cop. She's gay, and she's very gentle and intuitive as a copper. She's not hard-nosed. She uses her sort of female attributes to be a really empathetic copper when she doesn't take any nonsense, but she cares really about the victims and she really wants to get the best for them, and that makes her a really good copper. But I think that's more interesting than some of the stuff we've seen a million times before on TV and in books.
No, that's really interesting, and maybe this one's going over my head a little bit, but I was thinking about it earlier because obviously the 2 names, Ruth Hunter and Laura Hart. Ruth Hunter, obviously Truth Hunter. I guess that's where you got that from. But I'm missing Laura Hart. Where did the inspiration for that come from?
I don't know. Laura was just a name I liked, and I just kind of it worked. And Hart, I suppose, she's gone through a very emotional. She's very emotionally damaged at the beginning of the series. Her husband, she basically watched her husband die in the line of duty back in Manchester 3 years earlier. So her life's been turned upside down. She's left the police force and she's gone to rebuild her life. She's bringing up her kids in Anglesey. So I suppose Hart is about emotion. It's about the fact that she's emotionally broken and she's rebuilding her sort of her whole life. So it seemed to fit in with that. It kind of makes her quite an empathetic character, that name.
Yeah, no, I'm glad to hear you say this actually, because I did spend about 10-15 minutes yesterday just trying to work out. I was like, am I missing something, or is it just she's an emotional character?
Yes.
She's been through a lot, so Heart is like
her heart's broken, basically, and it's like her rebuilding her heart during this. I think that's how it works.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Fair enough. I've got it kind of follows on from where the origins of Ruth and Laura came from. This is a 2-part question, but do you base any of your characters in the books on anyone in real life, and if so, can you reveal anyone?
Well, Ruth is me in some ways because she's a South Londoner who relocated to North Wales.
Yes.
And so that's what I did. So, that's why, and it's that kind of, when I moved from South London to North Wales to where my wife is from, I was absolutely, it's like it's quite a culture clash, as you've probably found when you've gone to South Wales. And it's sort of, you're a Londoner in sort of like small town Wales is very different. my preconceptions of going to Wales are a certain way, aren't they? So you kind of think, oh, the Welsh are like this.
Yeah.
Small village Wales are like that. Some people are a bit resistant. It's like, you're from London, so you're and you know what. So, so I could write all that. So when so basically she's in the Met. She's having a really hard time. She's working in Peckham, which you can imagine is not a great place to be a detective at any time. Very tough. And so she just had enough. And she says, right, I'm going to go to live in North Wales and I'm going to be a police officer up there and see out my pension and just have a nice time, sheep rustling or tractor theft. And of course, when she gets there, it doesn't work out like that because that wouldn't make a very interesting series. But she has preconceptions and they're resistant to her. So I could write all that. So it's me.
Yeah.
And she's the same age as me, so I can write about what she liked when she was 18, and it's sort of similar.
Yeah.
So that's her.
Anyone else?
Most of them are amalgamations, so I'll kind of go, they're a bit like this person, a bit like that person, and then a bit kind of other stuff thrown in. But they kind of sort of tend to come organically as well. As you get to know them, you kind of start, oh, okay, she's that kind of person. That's how she reacts in a stressful situation. She's a bit spiky or whatever it is. But I haven't kind of solely just taken someone I know and gone, right, I'm just going to write that person. Anyway.
Yes. Well, and then the second part of this question
Yes.
is there are spoilers here for the first and fourth book. So do be careful if you haven't read them yet. Obviously, why haven't you read them yet? But the first victim in the Snowdonia Killings book was a headmaster, and the psychopathic villain in the fourth book was called Andrew. Your brother is called Andrew and a headmaster. Can you just talk me through that?
No, it's complete. The thing is, when I used to work as a teacher. So when I was writing that first book, when I was working as a teacher, I just went, I'm going to set it in a school.
Yeah.
So, I've obviously, there may have been people in that school that I didn't like. So possibly the people that got murdered in that school may possibly have been people I didn't like.
You just sat there in detention and one kid just is really rude or something like that.
And they
And
died.
you're just like, oh, okay,
You're
that
dead.
character's got to go.
Yeah. But I mean, these were teachers. So I just went, well, it wouldn't be the worst thing if that person got murdered in a car park.
Oops.
Yeah. And I go, ha, 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 ha. But obviously it's all fiction. So,
Yeah.
So yeah. So no, it's not a dig at my brother.
Well, I'm going to venture into a different path.
Yes.
Here, actually.
Okay.
I want to talk about, because obviously you've been a script writer on TV shows and you've worked in the film industry, that sort of thing. And I want to touch on sort of the adaptation of classic sort of crime, murder, mystery novels into today's like films. So stuff like Murder on the Orient Express, obviously a novel that was written a very long time ago and only recently developed into a film. I just want to hear your thoughts on them. How do you rate the adaptation of like the popular ones like that? Do you think they're missing anything or they're not? Just how do you rate them overall?
Yeah, no, I think they always do a really good job. They stay true to the classic while kind of bringing in some sort of more modern elements. And they always get, the casting's always great. I mean, so far, when the ones I've seen more recently, the casting's been absolutely spot on. The attention to detail. I mean, I love the fact that, it's quite nice to watch something period and you get cars and costumes and sets and it's just like, it looks beautiful and takes you back to a different time. And yet the kind of what's quite nice is the detective work when you're kind of solving a murder mystery. It doesn't matter whether it's 1939 or 2023 now. There's the same sort of process of eliminating people, evidence. It's like, so the process is the same, it's just a different setting, and I quite like that. It's quite interesting to see that a lot of those methods haven't changed that much.
No, definitely.
Yeah.
And a follow-on to that as well, is that an interest of yours to maybe work on more sort of film and TV in the future, whether it's script writing or producing or whatever? Is that an interest?
Yeah, I mean, I'm currently working on a Netflix series with Benedict Cumberbatch as a script consultant. So I have a friend of mine's writing a script for Netflix. It's set in New York and it's a crime series set in the 80s. So I'm helping her with those scripts. So I work on those, doing what I used to do a long time ago and making them better with her. So it's kind of given me a bit of a taste to kind of think, I reckon I could probably have a go at developing my own series, and so we'll see. Yeah, I kind of swore off being the film industry and the TV industry compared to the book and publishing is very different. The TV and film industry is very cutthroat.
Yeah.
Very.
Right.
I mean, there are so many large egos, and I found publishing people much nicer, much kind of gentler, and more encouraging, and just more supportive. So there's part of me that's a little bit like, do you really want to go back to that industry? But then having worked on those scripts for Netflix, I kind of go, yeah, I quite fancy doing something. So yeah, I will at some point. I'm sure I'll go back to it.
Yeah, definitely. And sorry, I've got another one. No,
It's fine, mate. Go for it.
But do you think that, so obviously in today's society, there's a lot of talk about how sort of attention spans are shrinking and people are far more invested in watching television shows and films than they are necessarily sitting down to read an entire novel. Do you think that that is a hindrance on, like, say you're a budding writer, for instance, you're still in school, anything like that, and you're inspired to be an author. Do you think that that's a hindrance to that person, that potentially it's harder for them to make it as an author?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I met a friend yesterday who's a TV director, and we were talking about his son's. We were talking about films actually, but which is kind of, but it's similar terms in terms of attention span, because we were talking about The Godfather, and we were talking
Great
about
movie.
it's like great movie, but slow. Well,
Yeah.
but I love slow, and I was brought up on slow films. But when I was as a teacher and just kind of with my own kids, I know that anything that kind of lacks pace, it's like, you guys have a generation where everything is like that. Everything is like memes and short videos and TikTok and everything's like fast. So the idea of sitting down and watching a 3-hour film where scenes can really take their time, I think it's difficult. And I think when I was your age, we didn't have the internet, so we didn't have that. It was much easier for us to sit down and read a book over an afternoon, or sit down in a cinema and watch a film that's 2.5, 3 hours long and kind of just go, right, this is normal. Whereas now, I think attention spans are different unless there's a car chase and kind of Spider-Man's flying around. It's a bit like, I don't know. I think it's harder.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'd say our generation is on the cusp of that, because there are some people who I'd say are our age and can't, exactly like you said, they can't sit through a long movie, has to be quick, snap, snap, snap. But then there's some people who still do appreciate it, so it's still...
Yeah.
We're sort of a middle ground.
Yeah.
I'd say if you're 5-10 years younger than us, then you're really struggling with
Yeah.
that sort of thing.
Yeah, and it's definitely an age thing. I think my daughter's 19 now, and she'll sit down and watch a really nice kind of art house movie that takes its time. But then she's interested in cinema. But I think as a sort of general sort of more of a sort of generalisation, I think it's the attention spans are getting shorter.
And what is surprising is podcasts. I'm taking this onto podcasts now. Is podcasts are massive right now.
Yeah.
And they are long form content.
Yeah, true.
They are a group of people sitting, not necessarily talking about things like this.
No.
But it's still massive right now, which is an interesting thing to talk about. When you have got some people will sit and scroll TikTok and then sit and watch a podcast. It's very...
But I think that's the appeal to it. I think podcasts can be such a background thing that if you're watching a film, if that's a background activity and you're doing something else like scrolling TikTok, you're not going to have a clue what's going on in the film. But with a podcast, you only have to really listen.
Yeah.
So you can have a podcast on while you're doing chores or anything like that. So I think that's the appeal to it.
Yeah, it's sort of background or going for a walk or whatever it is. You kind of have them sort of in the earphones on and you're doing something else. Actually, an interesting point though. I think it's sort of... But also, I know that from my own children, their viewing habits are so different now. They'll be watching stuff on YouTube. They won't watch a lot of terrestrial stuff. They certainly won't watch anything live. They won't sit down and watch something at 9 o'clock on terrestrial because maybe, Love Island. But you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's like when I was your age, that's what we had. We had terrestrial TV.
Yeah.
You could record it, but people would sit down and just watch what was on TV that night. Whereas now, the choice is incredible. So... It's changed massively in just a few decades.
Yeah,
it is almost too much.
Well, that's the thing as well. I think with the rise of smart TVs, you've got everything on demand all in once. You've got streaming platforms like Netflix, which if you don't want to watch something, you just turn it off and put something else on.
Yeah.
There's no I'd say the only live TV I watch now is just sport.
Yeah,
that's
cool.
it.
Yeah,
and nothing else. There's no, like you say, there's no waiting for my show comes on at
9
this
o'clock.
time.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
then so I'll wait
sit down and watch it.
Exactly.
Yeah, I remember I remember there was a TV show that decided to go to do weekly,
Yes.
and the internet went, sorry, what? Why are you doing weekly? Why isn't it all at once? And
I was
I can't remember the show.
I can't remember the show, but I know there are shows on streaming platforms that do that. For instance, one of my favourite shows is The Boys, which is on Amazon.
Yes.
Yeah. So you guys are both probably aware of it then, but that releases weekly, and but it's still, obviously they could just release it all in one go and it'd be so easy to binge. But I think the appeal of releasing something weekly is that there's so much speculation that goes on around it, especially with a show like that.
Yeah.
And I think particularly with like if there was a crime or murder mystery show that did weekly formatted episodes that was like really popularized, I think that would benefit so much from the speculation, intrigue that would go on, particularly online.
Yeah,
places like
social media.
Twitter. Social media is massive for fans getting together and just speculating about what's going to happen next. I think that's something that platforms like Netflix and Prime really benefit from.
Yeah, no, it's spot on. I think releasing, I mean, as you said, with a whodunit or a crime thing, and there have been I'm trying to think of any of, I think The Undoing with Hugh Grant and Nicole Kidman had that, where they were only, Sky Atlantic released it once, as you said, a weekly, and in between newspapers online, everyone was going, well, did Hugh Grant do it? Did he do it? And it's like, and it builds up, and then you've got a whole week also of an audience going, we need to know. And it's like, so when you sit down, it's a real event, rather than going, well, we can just watch this in 6 hours and have it done like that. I think that makes a big difference.
Makes a massive.
Yeah, absolutely. I think even more than that, I think it benefits the producers and the makers of these TV shows, especially because if you've got people talking about it, say you're in the office or you're with your friends and you're talking about this TV show, but you're talking about one episode in particular, that brings other viewers into it because they're going to want to be included in the conversation. Whereas if you talk about it and it's just you've been able to binge the whole thing. If you get to the end and it's an unsatisfactory ending, I'll use Game of Thrones as an example. If you're able to binge that entire season 8 in one go, you'd have got to the end and you'd have just been talking about how bad it was. But if you were able to watch episode by episode and you know that before the start of episode 3 there's a big battle coming, everyone's talking about it, that makes people want to go and watch it.
Yeah. The word of mouth is a big thing, and you don't, as you said, you don't get that if it's on people who just binge watched a series. They might go, "Oh, that's quite good," but you haven't got that build up where you're going, "Oh my god, are you watching so and so?
Yeah,
next week is going to be amazing. Why didn't you catch up with it?" And yeah, it's like the kind of water cooler TV stuff where people kind of meet at the water cooler and they start going, "Oh my god, what did you watch last night?" You don't get that with box sets.
No,
so it's not the same.
No, absolutely. And I was going to say as well, slightly different note, but how would you say is the biggest way that your novels have sold in terms of getting new readers, essentially? So is it word of mouth, or do you advertise? How's word spread, essentially?
So this series is done by HarperCollins, so they are like a massive kind of publishing company, and they have all their stuff set up. But when I set up my own press, I ran Amazon ads and Facebook ads and BookBub, and attracted an audience by running my own advertising campaigns and bits of marketing and bits of PR, and then built it that way, and built up a mailing list and just all that kind of stuff that you kind of goes into running your own sort of press. But you have to learn how to do it, and it's really complicated at the start, but I quite enjoyed it, and now I've got it's going so well now I employ other people to do it because I haven't got time. But when I first started, I had to do everything, and now I just farmed it all out. But
yeah, because I study marketing, so I'm obviously fascinated by the whole process of taking a product that no one's obviously ever heard of before, and especially with a novel, because there's so many out there, especially in the crime and murder mystery genre.
Sure.
It's so saturated with like good novels. I was just more curious about how you actually first got your foot in the door of getting a fan base, and then them keep coming back and buying.
Offered free novellas to start with to get on a mailing list. You build a mailing list. I think it was about 5,000 before I actually launched, kind of just offering free stuff, and just also with Facebook you can do that kind of that laser targeting. So you can just go, right, I want to target the fans of Ian Rankin or Anne Cleeves. I can then get my ads in front of them and get them to start going, visibility and that way. And same with Amazon, you can target either genre, but you can target a book. So you can kind of look at Richard Osman's books, which are fucking flying off the shelves, and go, right, well, when someone looks at that, I want my book to pop up and I'll pay for that. So it's that kind of stuff, and just knowing how that works and knowing what you should pay for it, and at which point you're going to kind of go, that's too expensive. And when you kind of think, well, that's working really well, I'll pump more money into that.
Yeah.
So all that stuff, you kind of have to, I spent a year learning all that. now I've farmed it. I don't have to think about it. It was good. I was good. It worked really well, and I enjoyed doing it. But
I suppose that's just a product of success, though, isn't it? Being able to pass it on to somebody else to sort it for you.
Yeah,
absolutely. And sorry, Max, I know I've got another question as well here, but I was just more curious. I think the answer may be obvious, but as a fan of like a murder mystery novel, do people buy based on the author, or do people buy based on the title, the picture on the front, or the blurb on the back?
That's a good question.
Good question. I think once you've got a fan base, they're very loyal. So I know that there's X thousand people that when I put a book up, they'll pre-order it. I kind of know it's roughly the same each time. And then when they get to the end, they'll look for the next pre-order and they'll pre-order it. And also, especially with the crime series are great because basically I also, not cheat, but I always put a hook at the end.
Of course, yeah.
Cliffhanger. So people go, you can't leave it like that. I need to know whether why he's been arrested or whatever it is, or is she dead? So then the next thing is bang, buy the next one. So that works. Initially, I think you have to, if you're doing an indie publishing, you've got to make your product look no different to something. That's a book by HarperCollins. If you're doing if you're running an indie press like I do, then it has to be zero difference between the book that I produce and that book. If there is, then people won't buy it because they'll just go, well, that doesn't look like the books I get in Waterstones. Or so the cover has to be spot on. That the cover is so important when you first start because it's the first thing that you see.
Yeah.
If it looks like a crime book and you think, oh, it looks just like the books I normally buy, suddenly you're interested. If the cover's not right, you've lost them already. They won't even read the blurb. So you kind of got that, and then the blurb. Yes, I suppose that's the second point at which they look at it. And then you also kind of do, it'll say perfect for fans of Ian Rankin and Cleves. You say, oh, I read that, so maybe that would be good for me. So,
how long did it take for you to get the Snowdonia Killings front cover right?
Not long, actually.
Yeah.
I went one way and tried to get it done, and then basically, I did some courses online about how to do indie publishing. And I heard this guy's name pop up, who's like the best cover producer, and I just went, I'm going to the best guy. And I already had an image in my head that I wanted, so I said, I like this image, which is like a hut on a sort of snowy mountaintop. It looks quite creepy. And he just kind of took it and adapted it, and he's brilliant. So once we had the image, then the rest of the stuff, and he's the best he works with all the really kind of big indie crime authors. I just went, yeah, that's perfect. So once I got him on board, and he's done every cover since.
Oh, fair enough.
Yes.
I was expecting a bit more of a difficult situation, but I guess that was
I didn't know. I suppose I lucked out on it. For whatever reason, it worked.
I suppose when you're entering an unknown field like that as well, the best option is just to go with someone with a lot of experience and proven track record.
Yeah.
Like it'd be so difficult to, and that could have really determined the success of your career. Would you say?
I think the book cover and the title. I think the title's has done me a huge favour because people go, oh, this is Snowdonia. I used to go holiday there, and the killing. Oh, I like crime books. I'll give that a go because you know what that book's about as soon as you see the title, the Snowdonia Killings. It looks like a crime book, and you know it's set in Snowdonia. So suddenly you're like, oh, that sounds interesting. So I think that really helped me along the way as well. So a lot of people from North Wales, or people that a lot of people like that kind of rural crime stuff, whether it's Norfolk or Scotland or Cornwall. They love kind of murder mysteries set in nice places and you see it on TV as well, don't you? So I just, the stars aligned.
It's worked out pretty well then.
Yeah, it's done all right.
Is Snowdonia Killings your biggest book by numbers, if you're allowed to reveal that?
Yeah. So total sales of 1.5 million on that series, but the first book is 300,000. So,
is it your favourite one? Do you have a favourite?
No. They've all got. I would say that's the best written book that I've done so far.
Yeah.
Mainly because I think each time you write a book, it gets slightly better. Obviously, the Snowdonia Killings was my first ever novel, so I went and had an editor, and we went backwards and forwards, and she was like, "You can't write that, and that doesn't work." And so it took a long time to get in place. And now, when I come to a book, I know I can write it like that. I know how to formulate it. I know what scenes look like. I know what the dialogue should sound like. So I'm thinking that the more I go along, the better the books get slightly. But also, I spent a lot of time with this book with the editors at HarperCollins, and we went backwards and forwards with it. So, and it's a little bit more complicated, and the timeline. So, I kind of think that's the best book I've written to date out of 22 books. So, but you know, the Snowdonia Killings has its place, and it's so I was always very fond of it.
Yeah. Well, obviously that came out 4 days ago. All right.
Yeah, 4 days ago.
Do you want to hold up to the camera?
So this is my new book. It's the shameless plugging. In Too Deep, available in very large Tesco's, and also Tesco's and independent bookshops, and on Amazon. So, in fact, if you want a cheap paperback, you can go to Tesco's, and it's £5.50, which is a bargain for a very, very thick crime novel.
That
It's
actually
not
is,
bad,
yeah.
actually.
Yeah. So, off you go.
Do you have any more questions, Tom?
Yeah, so I sort of touched on it earlier, but I was just wondering if we could get sort of a definitive, what would be, so obviously you were a teacher as well beforehand, so you know what it's like to sort of work with kids and potentially young writers as well, but what would be your single piece of advice to any young writer or like budding author, not necessarily one that wants to go into murder mystery or crime writing?
Sure. Right.
Just practice.
Just write and get it done. Don't prevaricate. I get people coming up. I've got people, whether they're young or old. So I do book signings and I do book festivals, and people come up and go, "I have this brilliant idea for a book," and I say, "Well, how much have you written of it?" "Oh, well, I haven't written it. I've just written down an idea." And I'll go, "Okay, well, you have to write the book." And I think the biggest problem is everyone says, "Oh, I've got a great idea for a book," to then convert that to a 400-page novel. So I would say, if you're a budding writer and you want to write, just keep writing, and your writing improves every time you go to the page and you kind of refine it. Show people that you trust. So whether or not whether it's a script or a book or a short story, show people, see what they think, and then have a think about it, and just keep doing it. Because while you're sitting there going, "I've got nothing to show anyone," then nothing's going to happen. And I think
No, of course, yeah.
there's a big chasm between having a great idea for a book and then sitting down for X hundred hours and then getting it down and getting to the end. So
Yeah, I suppose it's also one thing having a great idea, and then another thing being able to translate that into creating backstories and high levels of description and all the accompaniments to writing a great novel. Yeah.
So just keep writing, do short stories, and just keep doing it.
It's good advice, actually. Yeah.
Fair enough. Have you got anything else?
No, I think that was all for me.
Sorry, my voice is slightly going. I've been a bit ill the last few days, but thank you very much, Simon.
No problem. Fantastic. Really nice to meet you guys.
No, it's great. Thank you very much for coming on.
All right.
Is there anything else you want to shout out?
No,
Just the book.
Just the book.
I'm just this. Go and buy it from Tesco's.
Thank you very much, Simon, for coming on. And if you guys are here, thank you very much for staying this long. As always, me and Tom are always very thankful. Do check out our videos on TikTok. We've done pretty well recently on there, so do make sure you check that out. There'll be some nice clips of Simon on there. And also we hit 1K subs.
We did, yeah. We're very, very grateful to you all for getting us 1,000 subscribers. We put a little video out, just a compilation of some of the funniest, most interesting moments from the last year. So, yeah, thank you all for that.
Yeah, this is our first time in the studio since then. So, yeah, thank you very much. Check us out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and other such platforms. And we'll see you next Tuesday for another podcast.
Yeah.
Cheers.